Hey, sometimes you just run out of room trying to adjust body panels. So let me show you a way to create perfect door gaps and body panel gaps every time, or your money back. Guaranteed. Let's get into it. Okay, now this video is aimed mostly at the DIY guys and gals working on your own projects at your home garage. I want to give you some solid metalworking professional tips so that your project can turn out beautifully. Okay, now these trucks are notorious, the body style, in that they limit the amount of adjustability front and back of door movement. That's a problem. Sometimes you can't adjust the doors. There's just no gap. Now, I've already addressed the rear of the door. We have a very nice, consistent gap in metal. That's what we're shooting for. Now, I always, in metal, set the gap at 3/16 of an inch. That's going to be our guide. Now, let's take a look at the leading edge of the door. Using a paint stick as a rough guide. Very inconsistent gap. Further down we go, no gap. We're going to fix that. First thing you do, always assess the door hinges. If they need to be rebuilt, stop and do it. An easy, quick test, get at the bottom of the back of the door, lift in an upward motion. If it rocks back and forth or you see movement, stop, address it. Okay, now I've got some 60 grit on a flap wheel. We always want to use a flap wheel because we want to take off the least amount of metal when we're starting to prep. Don't want to thin out the metal. Don't want to use a heavy grit disc or anything. Okay, tape for a straight line where we're going to cut. Now usually I do 1/32 for my cuts. We're going to double that width. And we're using the tape because we want a very nice straight cut. We don't want a willy wonky cut. And there it is. Now this is a really important note. Don't cut on the edge. Leave a little bit of a lip. Okay, so we're going to make a tool that's going to allow us to have a perfect door gap. It's going to make life so much easier. We've got 3/16 piece of flat stock here. We're going to just cut out a wedge shape. Now polished it, bevel the edge. That's going to allow it to slide in that gap a little bit easier and to be inserted into the gap easier. 3/16. That's what our rear is finished out in. That's what we want our front to be also. Nice, consistent, slides easily. So we want to put this wedge in our tool. Now when we straighten it up, now we can close that gap. We can create our own gap with this tool. Just with that little bit of manipulation there. And we want to run the whole length of the gap that we're going to make just to make it a little bit easier. So we don't want to use a lot of excessive force. We want to everything to be a light force. So that way we're not pushing real hard and making inconsistent lines. This is really important. When we start the welding process, the panels have to be aligned. You start right and you can end perfect. Start wrong, well, there you go. Okay, here we go. Starting the welding process. You can see I have full control. I can move that cut gap wherever I want. Just a quick tap or tack. Now we don't want to pull that wedge out. We want to hammer it down the length. We want consistency. You know, we tack, move down. patience. We want to take our time, make sure the metal is in the correct position every time you weld it or tack it. If it's not, stop, cut it loose, start again. Now you can see our spacing. This is our initial. We just want everything right. Between each step of welding or tacking, we want to wire wheel it. And then we take off again. And we just keep repeating this step. Taking our time, letting the metal cool. Until we have something like this. What we don't want is any missed places, porosity, and we're going to wire wheel it again for the final time. Double check our work. If there's anything that needs to be addressed, let's just address it as we go. We don't want to skip steps. That's where you always run into problems. We're looking really good. And you can see where our gap is already really nice and consistent. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of duct tape here because we're going to start our grinding process. I don't want to damage the opposing panel. Don't want to put nicks, gouges, damage it in any way because then I got to come back and fix it. Why do that? Now this step is where you win or lose. We want to dress down that weld with ultra consistency. We don't want to gouge the metal. We don't want to burn through, make the metal thin. Here's a close-up shot of that. We do not want to go below flush or get on that edge. You're going to have big problems because you might miss that, then it'll come back after you paint, cracking. Here's what it should look like. At flush or just above flush. Now we can come back with our 60 grit on our flap wheel. Finish this thing off. You can see where we're at now and what we've accomplished. Really nice, straight, consistent gap. We're going to clean this up a little bit. Run our tape line so that we have a straight guide to go by. We never want to eyeball this. That's for sure. You can see we have just a minor amount of cleanup to make that a perfect edge. Everything is going our way at this point. And I'm using a Rowlett disc just to finish this thing off. I like it. Okay, so let's go back to our rear of the door where we've already gapped it using our tool. 3/16 of an inch gap in the rear. Three-sixteenths of a inch gap in the front. Now we have a really nice consistent door gaps front and rear. Here's a close-up of what you can accomplish if you have good instruction, you follow directions, and follow the formula. You can do this at home on your project. High build primer, no bodywork necessary. Okay, now there are two gap sizes. The metal finish gap, that's at this point. Now, paint finish gap is different. You got to take into consideration your bodywork, primer, paint, clear coat. Those things are going to cause the gap to shrink. Whatever you decide to set your gap at or what you want it in paint, the final paint gap. Keep that in mind. Very important. Hey man, support the channel. If I'm doing a good job for you, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Thanks for watching.